today I am joined by Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So, the state of Montana is one of 20 states suing the Biden administration over its planned changes to the Title IX rule. What were your reasons for joining this lawsuit?
Well, simply put, I'm the father of girls. I've got a strong wife. I've got two very strong-willed daughters, and we need to protect women's sports. We need to protect women under Title IX. And I view the Biden administration's proposed rule change as nothing more than an attack on women by allowing transgendered males to come into what has been traditionally women's space and protected women's spaces. I think is incredibly dangerous. I think it's destructive. I think it's wrongheaded. And to me, this was just a no-brainer.
The way that they would carry out this change is by actually redefining the word sex in Title IX to include gender identity. But there's a bill now in your state's legislature that would do the exact opposite. How do you see those two issues colliding?
Well, they're definitely on a collision course, but I think the way our state legislature is moving is a much more defensible and frankly, just a smarter move. Senator Carl Glimm has got a bill moving through the state legislature that would define sex as your biological sex at birth. To me, just from a legal standpoint, as the chief law enforcement officer in the state, as the guy who's in charge of criminal justice records, who's in charge of the motor vehicle division, issuing driver's licenses, and then just from our state the Department of Public Health, issuing birth certificates. I mean, this has become a fight in Montana where people want to carve out a new special area for themselves and define themselves on their birth certificate, on their driver's license as non-binary. That's literally not in our state law. And this is creating a real legal issue for us. So having good, clear, scientific definitions that I can go into court, that I can defend, that aren't nebulous. Lawyers, we live and we die in the courtroom by good, clear definitions. And so I think the state of Montana's proposed rule moving through the legislature is light years better than this kind of nebulous, amorphous, loosey-goosey definition that's being pushed by the Biden administration.
You're raising an issue I haven't heard from anyone else in this series about the issue of redefining sex and what it does to records, whether that's birth certificate, your driver's license, anything in that arena. Could you explain a bit more about how that creates problems?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's several. I mean, if you've been issued a driver's license in Montana, I mean, right now it's two boxes that get checked. It's either male or female. There's no in between. There's no other definition allowed under our state law right now. We've actually got a case pending where an individual who already has been issued a driver's license now wants a special carve out and has sued the state to be allowed a third category there as non-binary. Well, that's not something that I'm comfortable with the courts in Montana deciding. That's a legislative issue. If this person wants that done, then they should go to the state legislature, have a legislator drop in a bill, run that through the process. And if it's a good idea, the state legislature will adopt it. But that's not what's being done here. And this is what we see over and over. These people run to courts. They try to get in front of liberal judges who will issue injunctions and block my agencies from doing what we are bound to do by state law. You know, this isn't something that's being ideologically driven by us. We are literally executing state law. State law says you are either a male or a female. That's literally the only options we have when we're issuing you a driver's license. But now we're in a situation where we've inserted a court, and this person is asking the judiciary to force this legislation upon us. So, I mean, they really are asking for judicial activism, and I think one of the worst ways. But I can go even further. I mean, I'm in charge of criminal justice information. If you're a prior convict, if you've got a felony conviction and all your felony records, your arrest records, your conviction records show you as either a male or a female, and now we're going to come in and we're going to allow you to alter that sex definition later in your lifetime. Well, what does that do to your criminal justice records? Nobody has a good answer for this. And I mean, this raises flags with local jurisdictions running background checks. This raises issues with criminal histories. If you're picked up for another crime later, and you now you were a biological male, but you identify as a female, what implications does that have for criminal justice information in your history? I can see lots of room for errors. I can see lots of room for shenanigans here, and that's what we're trying to head off.
The safety issues that you talk about in a legal sense may be about to become very real for families who are not trying to run afoul of any laws, but they are wondering if they should put their daughters in sports where they're going to have to play against biological men. That becomes a physical safety problem. So what would you say to parents like yourself who have daughters who maybe want to be involved in sports, but they're questioning, is it going to be safe to do so if Biden's Title IX rule goes forward?
I would say do your homework. I mean, I would say what I always tell people, all politics is local. And in Montana especially, you've got a local elected school board. If you are looking to put your daughter into a sports program or even into a school program, I'd be very vocal. I would talk to my school board members. I'd find out what their policy is. What is the sports policy? Is your daughter going to be safe, not only on a sports court, but I mean, let's talk about a locker room. We've had a number of instances where these transition males who now claim they're females have committed sexual violence in locker rooms and bathrooms. Again, as a father of teenage girls, that's certainly a consideration that I have and a consideration that I would have. So your local school administrators and your local school boards need to hear from you. It is time to get engaged. We know this kind of engagement works. We've seen it work in other states. Those school boards, when enough pressure is brought to bear on them from local parents who stand up, they will pay attention and they'll ultimately do the right thing.
Doing the right thing is critically important, but the Biden administration is very likely about to make it harder. And the penalty, as you know, Attorney General, for violating Title IX can be losing your federal funding. So when we think about schools, colleges, universities that are concerned about losing their federal dollars if they do what's right for students and preserve women's sports for women, what is your message to school leaders who may be about to be stuck between a rock and a hard place?
Well, I've got a couple of messages. I mean, first of all, it's unfortunate that we're being forced to pick between an extreme ideology and common sense. I mean, that really is a sad state of affairs when we're talking about the United States right now. Secondly, I would say be brave, be strong, do the right thing. The last thing I would say is be patient. I mean, these rules, if the rule is changed, you can be certain there are going to be lawsuits. Montana will absolutely be involved in those lawsuits, in those challenges. We have a number of challenges pending now. There are a number of cases out there now. But I think our chances in court are very good. I do not think the federal judiciary is going to stand by and let a wholesale rule change like this go into place without congressional action. I mean, here again, we have the Biden administration knowing full well they do not have enough support in the Congress or in the Senate to do what they want done on this issue. So what do? Just like they've done with the EPA, just like they've done with the ATF, they pass a sweeping rule change and try to change law within the administrative state. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to look kindly on that. If you look at any of their recent jurisprudence, specifically the EPA case, I think you're going to see the Supreme Court look pretty dimly on this and probably slap them down. But unfortunately, I think the Biden administration is probably going to make us go that route. I'm happy to do that. A lot of my colleagues are very happy to do that. So I think that's where we're headed. But my advice would be bold and be patient.
That's great advice, an important message, and thank you for standing up for civil rights under Title IX. Attorney General Knudsen, thank you for being here.
You bet. Thanks for having me.